Imagine this. The American Revolution is over, the smoke has cleared, but the United States is on the brink of collapse. The nation is broke, buried under a mountain of debt from the war. Each state has its own IOUs, and the national currency is practically worthless. The dream of a new republic is turning into a nightmare. Out of this chaos steps a man with a plan so audacious, so controversial, it would either save America or tear it apart. That man was Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, looked at the financial mess and saw an opportunity. He proposed a radical two-part solution. First, the federal government would take on all the war debts of the individual states. This was a massive gamble. States that had already paid off their debts, like Virginia, were furious. Why should they bail out less responsible states? It seemed unfair, a power grab by a central government that many still distrusted. But for Hamilton, it wasn't just about paying bills. It was about binding the states together, forcing them to rely on the new federal government. He wanted to create a national identity out of a shared financial destiny. Every soldier, every farmer, every merchant who held a government IOU would now look to the federal government, not their state, for payment. It was a brilliant, if contentious, move to forge a single unified nation. The second part of his plan was even more revolutionary. The creation of a national bank, the first bank of the United States. This institution would act as the government's financial agent, holding its funds, issuing a stable paper currency, and providing loans to spur economic growth. To his opponents, led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, this was a step too far. They saw it as an unconstitutional overreach of federal power, a dangerous imitation of the corrupt British financial system they had just fought a war to escape. They argued the Constitution didn't explicitly grant Congress the power to create a bank. But Hamilton fired back with his doctrine of implied powers, arguing that the bank was necessary and proper to carry out the government's financial duties. The debate was fierce, splitting Washington's cabinet and creating the first political parties. In the end, Washington sided with Hamilton. The plan was a go. And just like that, America's financial markets were born. In 1791, when shares of the new Bank of the United States went on sale, it was like a starting gun for a frantic race. The public offering was a wild success, oversubscribed within an hour. People who had never thought about stocks were suddenly desperate to get in on the action. This created something new and dangerous: rampant speculation. A financial frenzy gripped the young nation. And at the center of this whirlwind was a man named William Duer. Duer was a classic Wall Street character, before Wall Street even really existed. He was brilliant, ambitious, and utterly reckless. As the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, he had access to inside information about Hamilton's plans. He saw the new financial system not as a tool for national stability, but as a personal gold mine. Duer secretly resigned from his government post and, using his connections and privileged knowledge, began borrowing huge sums of money to make massive, speculative bets on bank stocks and government securities. He formed a secret partnership to try and corner the market, driving prices up to dizzying heights. People saw Duer getting rich and jumped in, borrowing money they didn't have to buy stocks they didn't understand. The market became a bubble, inflated by greed, rumor, and Duer's reckless ambition. He was the king of a paper empire. But like all bubbles, this one was destined to pop. In March of 1792, the party came to a crashing halt. Duer's web of loans and schemes began to unravel. He couldn't borrow any more money to cover his bets. His creditors came calling, demanding their money back, but Duer didn't have it. He defaulted on his loans, and his paper empire collapsed overnight. The news hit the market like a shockwave. Panic spread through the streets of New York and Philadelphia. Everyone who had followed Duer's lead was now ruined. Stock prices plummeted. Banks stopped lending. Credit froze. Fortunes that had been built in months were wiped out in days. This was the panic of 1792, America's very first stock market crash. The nation held its breath. Was this the end of Hamilton's grand experiment? Would the young republic's economy die in its cradle? Just as chaos threatened to consume the nation, Alexander Hamilton stepped in. He wasn't going to let his creation fail. He saw that the panic was a crisis of confidence, and he acted with the decisiveness of a battlefield commander. He convened an emergency meeting with the directors of the Bank of New York. Then, in a move that would set a major precedent for the future, Hamilton authorized the Treasury to step into the market. He ordered the strategic purchase of government securities. injecting cash directly into the system to prop up their prices and restore liquidity. He coordinated with the Bank of the United States and other private banks to offer loans and reassure the public. Essentially, Hamilton orchestrated the first-ever government bailout. He was acting as a lender of last resort, a central banker before the term was even common. His actions were bold, unauthorized, and absolutely necessary. Slowly but surely, Hamilton's intervention worked. Confidence began to return to the market. The panic subsided. The crash was contained. William Dewar ended up in debtor's prison, a symbol of the dangers of unchecked speculation. But Hamilton's financial system had survived its first great test. The crisis proved that the new federal government and its treasury had the power and the will to stabilize the economy in a time of crisis. It established the principle of federal intervention in financial markets, a concept that would be debated and utilized for centuries to come, right up to the modern day. The Panic of 1792 was a baptism by fire. It was chaotic, destructive, and terrifying. But from its ashes, the American economy emerged stronger, more resilient, and set on a course that would eventually make it the most powerful economic force in the world. Hamilton's vision, born in a time of uncertainty, had laid a foundation that endures to this day. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this dive into history interesting, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the events that shaped our world. See you next time.